We'll call this meeting of the Silver City Town Council to order. Please rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That was hysterical.
Yeah, that was.
If I could ask Councilor Bettison to read the mission statement.
Thank you, Mayor. Silver City is the hub of an inclusive community settled within a small town that through guided growth honors and preserves its historical, cultural, and natural heritage while facilitating jobs, health, and educational resources such that the residents and visitors may enjoy and protect the recreational opportunities of the area and high quality of life.
Thank you. Just so everybody knows, Councilor Ray is actually right here on the phone. So if you notice that the podium is right here, that's so he can hear and be heard. I've got the microphone pointed that way. I hope it works for you. If it doesn't work and he can't hear well, there's some items on the agenda that he won't be able to participate in. We're just going to have to verify that he's able to participate. The next item on the agenda is public input. I remind everybody you have 5 minutes to speak. If you're looking at me, I'll give you a 1-minute warning, and you'll be standing right in front of me. Whack inside the head.
You might want to do this all the time.
So, the first person is Walter Ski Semensky.
My name is Walter Szymanski, and I'm a resident of the town of Silver City, and talk about being up close and personal to the elected representatives of the town. This is pretty unique. Anyway, I just wanted to take 1 minute to say thank you to Councilor Moronis and to Councilor Thompson for taking the time a few days ago to meet with several of us in the neighborhood that's had some issues with heavy through traffic in an area that wasn't designed for heavy through traffic, and concerns about speeders and some reckless driving. And they were both of those counselors are very helpful in helping us get our head around that issue and some methods of traffic control. I also want to thank the town for acting pretty quickly on a request that our neighborhood association made for some stop signs in that area as a test to see if they wouldn't help control the issues, the public safety issues that we all in the neighborhood were concerned about. So thank you all for your time and effort, and thank the town for a speedy response to our concerns in that matter. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Lopez.
Good evening, council members. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm here tonight to contribute my public input on the issue of, I guess you would say, cultural sensitivity in our community in Grant County, which is tied into that sensitivity in the country. I was reading the paper this last Saturday, and I learned that Johnny Depp may be coming to Silver City to film a updated version of The Lone Ranger, and it was surprising to read that they were going to reinvent this movie, but it wasn't surprising that it was Disney, because they've made a lot of other attempts to reinvent old Western movies. And it made me feel really good to hear Johnny Depp say that as playing the part of Tonto, he was going to do the best he could to reinvent that character so that it wouldn't put down Native Americans in the way that it originally was formatted to do. A lot of people don't know that the word Tonto, when pronounced in Spanish, means tonto, which means stupid or dumb. And that's what it was meant to be in the original format. I remember as a kid, when it would be on TV, and in the 70s, I grew up in the 70s, my father would make me turn it off, and he explained that to me when I was a child. And I just kept saying, no, it's just a movie, it's just a TV program. And he said, no, you'll learn why later, son. So here we have the movie being reinvented, and Johnny Depp actually working his hardest as an actor to reinvent that character to be more culturally sensitive to Native Americans. So I'm very proud of that. I guess, and it also says that this movie is going to bring income and some jobs to Grant County if they decide to film in Silver City. So that's another good thing. So I'm going to use this opportunity to bring this issue that I've been wanting to talk about for a very long time as a resident of Silver City. There's some things that we can do to fall in line with Johnny Depp in our own community by addressing racial stereotypes that are promoted in Grant County. And as a way of doing this, I'd like to say that I'm committed wholeheartedly to writing formal letters to either private business owners and then getting on board with the councils of different cities in the county to try to address these use of racial stereotypes to portray Native Americans. I'm Native American. I am of the Agua Caliente, Southern California Indian tribe, and Pechanga Indian tribes in Southern California, and considered Mission Indians or Cahuilla as a group. And so this is a very touching issue for me. Since I've been in Grant County, I've taken notice of some things that we might be able to address, such as Injun Joe at the Buckhorn, who used to be sitting at the bar as a stuffed Indian, and now is sitting in front of a slot machine in the corner by the restrooms. And I read in the Mountain Gazette a while back a long article a guy wrote about how cool it was to drink beer next to Injun Joe, and it's actually spelled that way, INJUN, Joe. And it really hurts my feelings. I went to visit the Buckhorn to see for myself, and it just made me feel bad as a human being that my people were being portrayed in this way as drunk Indians or gambling Indians now, because everybody knows about the casinos. I understand that the post office in Pinos Altos was approached several different times about taking their stuffed Indian away from the counter, and they refused. I haven't had a conversation with the owner yet. I bought ice cream there and taken my children there. But that's another area where we might be able to work on having them remove that. Cobre High School uses the word Indian, and they use the symbol of the chief as a war symbol that conquers and dominates their opponent in sports. I didn't think that was that bad until I went to a game last year against Silver and Cobre, and at halftime, a Caucasian student riding on a horse with his shirt off, with a fake headdress, war paint, moccasins, and with weapons in hand, was riding back and forth on his horse and encouraging the crowd to make this sound, wah, 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 which is a Hollywood version of what they think the sounds we make in our ceremonies. And people were making the hatchet motion, which we see done in professional sports. Central Elementary uses a small mascot Indian boy with a headband and a feather.
Mr. Lopez.
Okay, I'm going to close. I'm going to wrap up here. The last thing I would like to say is that the use of Billy the Kid as an image of the lawless frontier has now turned into a criminal turned hero for the Southwest. And it's on the Visitor Center pamphlet welcoming people into our community. It is now the New Mexico Department of Tourism has created this scavenger hunt called Catch the Kid, and you see his picture everywhere. This is an example here on Pulse of Billy the Kid. My great uncle was the sheriff of Mesilla, and he had Billy the Kid in jail. This is a criminal, and our county is promoting his image.
Your time's up.
Okay, and so in closing, I would like to say that derogatory portrayal of an entire group of people through racial stereotypes is very insensitive, and I think as a group of people and community, we can work on eliminating this if we work together. And I'd like to see that for my children and for the sake of all the other children in this community who can grow up being culturally and very sensitive to other people. Thank you for hearing me out.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is council comments. Councilor Bedison, would you like to start?
No comments, Mayor. Thank you.
Councillor Thompson?
No comments.
Councillor Ray?
No comment, thank you.
Councillor Morales?
No comments today, sir.
Well, I don't want to ruin a good thing, so we'll just forgo council comments. Next item on the agenda is any changes to the agenda? Seeing none.
There is. Yes, Mayor, there is.
The bid, can we postpone it? The next special meeting?
We could do that
Okay.
when it comes up. We'll just make a
Okay.
motion to postpone action. It was advertised, right?
Yes.
And it wasn't pulled from advertising? We'll do it through action. And next item is approval of minutes of the regular meeting, July 26, 2011.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilor.
I move that we approve the minutes of the regular town council meeting of July 26, 2011.
There's a motion and a second. Councillor Thompson. To approve the minutes of the regular meeting of July 26, 2011. Is there any discussion? There's a motion, a second, no discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion carried. Next item on the agenda is under reports. Mr. Brown?
I don't have anything.
You don't want to run it either. Anything from the police department?
No, Mayor, at this time, nothing, Chief Reynolds, nothing to report.
Thank you. Mr. Russell? Mr. Coates? Go ahead and come up here.
Mr. Mayor, Councilman, this is the first time I've appeared before you as a staff person. I appreciate this opportunity. One of the things that you have tasked me with as a member of the Community Development Department is to develop a pedestrian and bicyclist master routes plan. And I just want to let you know, and those here tonight, that one of the first steps that we're going to do is a neighborhood meeting at the public library on August 18th at 5:30. And this is an opportunity for the citizens to come out and let us know what types of destinations and linkages they want for their routes for pedestrians and bicyclists. August 18th, 5:30 at the public library. Thank you very much.
We'll advertise that appropriately.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you.
Anything from the fire department? Denise, anything from the Office of Sustainability? Okay. We're good. Next item on the agenda is public hearings. And the first hearing is entitled Approval Disapproval of Resolution Number 2011-27, a resolution providing for the encroachment of a portion of the East 13th Street right-of-way. The town council will serve as the hearing board, and I as mayor will be the presiding officer. Have any members of this hearing board had ex parte discussion with any person regarding the subject matter of this hearing, or had any communication from any party to this case?
No, sir.
Negative.
Hearing none, you're all qualified. Will all parties and witnesses intending to testify, including those staff members who intend to present testimony or who will be available for questioning, please rise and come to the podium to be sworn in by the town clerk. If you have not been sworn, you will not be permitted to testify or otherwise participate in this hearing.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. State your name.
I, Coates,
You have to speak up. I, Alicia Edwards, do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear or affirm
that the testimony I am about to give
that the testimony I'm about to give
in the matter before this council
in the matter before this council
is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
The truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth,
Under penalty of perjury.
under penalty of perjury.
Mayor Mary and officer just sworn into Council Ray. Council Ray, we just swore in Jim Coates and Alicia Edwards.
Okay, I heard that.
Thank you. The hearing will be conducted as follows. The town staff shall present a brief synopsis of the application based on the application or actions taken by the director, by P&Z Commission, or by town staff. Then the applicant shall present their case. Next will come witnesses in support of the applicant's case. The applicant, staff, or witnesses may then be questioned by the hearing board. The presiding officer will then ask the applicant if that concludes its case in chief, and states that the proponent and its witnesses will remain available to be further questioned by the hearing board, by staff, or by opponents to the application. Following the close of the applicant's case, witnesses in opposition to the applicant's case shall be permitted to testify, during the course of which the witness may address questions to any previous witness, but such questions shall be made through the presiding officer. The presiding officer shall have the sole discretion in directing the question for response, considering whether the question is relevant, is cumulative to other testimony, or is otherwise inappropriate. At the close of testimony against the application, the presiding officer asks the applicant if there's anything else you wish to be reflected in the record. Mr. Coach, you can proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have a request tonight from the Volunteer Center of Grant County for an encroachment permit for approximately 780 square feet into the 13th Street right-of-way to allow for designated off-street parking for future development of a parcel, including the west 10 feet of lots 1, 3, 5, and 7, and all of lots 2, 4, 6, and 8 of Block 254, Fraser Survey, Town of Silver City, Grant County, New Mexico. Resolution 201127 before you relates to that encroachment request. Just a little note about where this particular parcel is and what the applicant is asking for. The red rectangle indicates the parcel that is PA Creek coming down. Okay, go back. Pardon me, sir.
Push F5.
As you can see, it is the parcel is relatively close to the downtown area. There's a golf park over to the left a few blocks. It is though it is in a commercial zone, and but in a mixed-use zone actually, because there is a lot of residential area. Right next to it on the right is the Knights of Columbus Hall. That kind of sets the stage of where this particular piece of property is that they're asking for the encroachment. Okay, next slide, please. This is a view of the property from across 13th Street. It's a fairly quiet residential street, and there's not a whole lot of traffic. Okay, thank you. The Volunteer Center acquired the property in January of 2001 for the purpose of eventually building their office and a community kitchen and a food distribution center. Right now they are providing the food distribution program for the community. The property itself in the back of the lot would be where the building is, but because of the size of the building and the use of the building, they would be required to have 7 designated parking spots. To incorporate those parking spots within the property itself and yet still maintain quite a bit more room for the gardening, which they do with the community, they wanted to encroach upon the right-of-way of 13th Street, 680 square feet. Okay, next. And here's a view from Swan and 13th Street of the property. That's Knights of Columbus on the right. Next slide. You can see the encroachment area is on the lower right the property line cuts that colored striping area into the parking area, would encroach just part of that way. It would not encroach into the sidewalk area. The community participation ordinance did not apply for them to have to go to their neighbors, but we did send out notification to their neighbors about the encroachment application and received no comments from neighbors one way or the other. We did have town staff review, and the only review comments that we got from town staff was that meters, wanted to make sure they'd have access to meters, and code enforcement wanted to make sure that the meters would be there, but also that no sidewalk encroachment would occur, that there would always be access to the pedestrian sidewalk in front of that parking area. Next slide. Here you see a vision somewhat of what they're looking at, but the fence there behind the vehicle would not be there. The parking would actually be a little bit further back. So that is not actually where it would be. You can go to that next slide if you would. The fence would not be there, and the parking area would start to the left of that fence a little bit, remaining outside of the sidewalk area, so there would be plenty of room for pulling in. The code enforcement also mentioned that there would be a need to cut the curb and slope it a little bit in front of that parking area. So the Community Development Office recommends, with those conditions, that the encroachment permit be accepted, and with the following findings: that the requested permit conforms to the town's comprehensive plan, the land use code, and any relevant policies adopted by the town. The proposed encroachment does not endanger the health, safety, or general welfare of the community, and the proposed encroachment is the minimum necessary to make reasonable use of the applicant's property. The conditions that we recommend: that the access to the utility meter must remain clear. The sidewalk adjacent to the encroachment into the right-of-way must remain accessible to pedestrians at all times. No further encroachment shall occur, and the town can require removal of the encroaching portions of the structures after a 90-day notice to the owners. Any questions?
Does the Knights of Columbus have an encroachment?
The Knights of Columbus? I can only testify that I don't know.
Any questions?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Can you just go back to the one where it shows the encroachment, the map of the area that shows
That one?
So my question is because it was hard for me to figure out, the stippled area is the sidewalk?
On the lower portion there?
Yeah, on the lower portion. So
Right,
that
that's the sidewalk
Okay,
area.
so that's the sidewalk. Okay, great. That was the only question I had.
Okay.
Thanks. That's it.
Thank you very much.
Alicia, you may present your case now.
Good evening, Mayor Marshall and Council. I appreciate your consideration of this encroachment request. We're asking for this specifically to save the 680 square feet of garden space that this would take up. So if you grant the encroachment request, we would be able to move the parking back enough to save 680 square feet of the community garden. That's the purpose of asking for this. People will be able, the construction plans, which I have with me if you wish to see them, show the curb cut extending the width of the 7 parking places that are required. And people would drive directly, in there and be off of the sidewalk in the parking as it's proposed. I did talk with Jim about this. We met at the property and talked about it, and he did specifically request that I make sure that any oversized pickups with, big hitches on them would fit in the space, and we will take that into consideration and ensure that at no time the sidewalk is blocked by any portion of the vehicle. That's all I have to say.
Anything else? Any questions?
I just want to comment, thank you for stating about the oversized trucks, because that was actually what I was going to ask, so thank you.
Any questions?
No, sir.
Questions?
Thank you.
Nothing else you wish to be reflected in the record?
No, sir.
Thanks. Does any member of the hearing board have any questions for any witness?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Oh, I gotta ask. Is there anyone in opposition to the application? Now, does any member of the hearing board have any questions for any witness?
No.
No, sir.
Councilor Ray, were you able to hear the testimony?
Yes, I sure was. Yes, Mayor.
Is the hearing board prepared to consider the application and render its decision?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Will entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move for approval of resolution number 2011-27, a resolution providing for the encroachment of a portion of East 13th Street right-of-way with the requirements given by staff. Under the findings, the requested permit conforms to the town's comprehensive plan, the land use code, and any relevant policies adopted by the town. And 2, the proposed encroachment does not endanger the health, safety, or general welfare of the community. And 3, the proposed encroachment is the minimum necessary to make reasonable use of the applicant's property.
Councilor Thompson.
I'd like to second that.
There's a motion and a second to approve resolution number 2011-27 as presented. Is there any discussion?
Do the conditions need to be read into the motion?
You did, didn't you?
No, those are the findings.
I read the findings and I said the conditions as recommended.
So we don't have to read them then?
No.
Okay, thank you.
He basically moved to approve 2011-27 as presented
Right.
in your packet.
Right.
Is there any other discussion? There's a motion and a second. No further discussion. Roll call, please.
Councilor Lyons,
Aye.
Councilor Ray,
Councilor Ray, your vote.
Aye.
Councilor Thompson.
Aye.
Councilor West.
Aye.
Motion carries. That concludes this hearing. Next on the agenda is another hearing. Approval, disapproval of appeal number AP 11-01 of a variance approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission on July 5th, 2011 for an 1,800 square feet accessory building at 4425 Langstroth, owner John Callahan, appellant is Thomas Snuff, neighbor. The town council will serve as the hearing board and I as mayor will be the presiding officer. Have any members of this hearing board had ex parte discussion with any person regarding the subject matter of this hearing or had any communication from any party to this case?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilor Bedison.
I had a chance encounter with Mr. Knupp and Mrs. Knupp, and Mr. Knupp did state that he would be before the council on a matter related to building on his neighbor's property, and I just pretty much waved it off and continued to move, and Mrs. Knupp changed the subject as I went around the back end of the car. So there was really not much discussion about this pertaining to any comment that Mr. Knupp or Mrs. Knupp had to say about stuff. It's up to you guys, though.
Thank you.
Right?
I do not feel that the topic was discussed. I also had a telephone conversation with former Councilor Knupp, and we did not discuss the topic. He asked for a meeting, and then before we scheduled the meeting, he realized we couldn't talk. So we never did talk. So I believe we're all qualified. Any objections?
No.
Will all parties and witnesses intending to testify, including those staff members who intend to present testimony or who will be available for questioning, please rise, come to the podium to be sworn in by the town clerk. If you have not been sworn, you will not be permitted to testify or otherwise participate in this hearing.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Peter Russell,
Do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear or affirm
that the testimony I am about to give
that the testimony I am about to give
in the matter before this council
in the matter before this council
is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth,
is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth,
under penalty of perjury.
penalty of perjury.
And Mayor, may I read the names?
Please.
Council Ray, we swore in John Callahan, Luann Mitchell, Tom Knupp, Dana Knupp, Joyce Newman, and Peter Russell.
Okay.
The hearing will be conducted as follows. The town staff shall present a brief synopsis of the appeal based on the application or actions taken by the director, by P&Z commissioner, or by town staff. Then the appellant shall present their case. Next will come witnesses in support of the appellant's case. The appellant, staff, or witnesses may then be questioned by the hearing board. The presiding officer will then ask the appellant if that concludes its case in chief and states that the proponent and its witnesses will remain available to be further questioned by the hearing board, by staff, or by opponents to the appeal. Following the close of the appellant case, witnesses in opposition to the appellant case shall be permitted to testify, during the course of which the witness may address questions to any previous witness, but such questions shall be made through the presiding officer. The presiding officer shall have the sole discretion in directing the question for a response, considering whether the question is relevant, is cumulative to other testimony, or is otherwise inappropriate. At the close of testimony against the appeal, the presiding officer asks the appellant, is there anything else you wish to be reflected in the record?
Staff report.
Mr. Mayor, Council, you have before you, I believe, the notice of decision. Allow me to summarize the issue. On July 5th, Mr. Callahan appeared before the Planning and Zoning Commission requesting a variance to increase the size of an accessory dwelling structure. At that time, he had applied for an 1,800 square foot building, and his reported measurement of his own building was about 1,750 square feet. So the allowed size of the building in that area would be 875 square feet. Let me remind you that in general, the rule for sizing accessory dwelling structures is a minimum of 600 square feet. It can be up to 50% of the principal structure. And the purpose is to sort of maintain an appearance of residential residences such that the accessory structures are always smaller than the primary structure, the primary use, which is residence. At the hearing, Mr. Callahan spoke about his interest in having a Mueller building brought in. It's a metal building that's prefabricated and can be assembled on site, and that he wanted to use it he had a hobby of working on antique cars, and he wanted to use it as a place where he could shelter his hobby, and the vehicles were expensive. He also mentioned that he might want to have an accessory dwelling unit for family in that same building, so that when people visit or he needed to care for elder relatives or whatever, they would have a place to come. And he specifically expressed the merit of having them in the same building so that the expense would be reduced. In other words, you wouldn't have to double up on plumbing and electrical main circuits, etc. Let me remind you also that in terms of accessory dwelling structures, You may have as many as you like, so long as the setbacks between buildings that the fire code establishes, so long as those setbacks are maintained, and so long as the perimeter setbacks, front, rear, side setbacks are maintained. So in this instance, Mr. Callahan could build 3 800 square foot buildings, but not more than 1 875 square foot buildings. The hearing was held by the Planning and Zoning Commission. There were some opponents. Mr. and Mrs. Knupp appeared in opposition. The commission did award a variance and made the findings necessary for the variance. Mr. Knupp has come in and filed an appeal, which you have before you. One of the issues that emerged afterwards as we looked at the appeal and were working on the notice of decision was that actually Mr. Callahan had understated the size of his building. He had reported the conditioned space, which is one standard for reporting the size of a building. But actually our code allows the exterior walls of a building, or where there are no walls, the drip line of the roof. So a porch would be included in the size of your building under the code rules, although a realtor might not promote it as part of the livable space or the conditioned space of the building. So when Mr. Callahan reported a larger space, we had the building inspector go up and actually make measurements. So the actual measurements of the building are 2,950 feet or something. You have that before you. So the actual allowed size of a accessory structure would be 1,400 square feet that he could do by right without receiving a variance, which is substantially larger than the 875 square foot threshold that the Planning Commission first heard. As I said, Mr. Knupp has appealed. We put out notices to the neighbors within the required distribution radius, and there was a woman who came in today, Joyce Clark Newman, who's present here as well. I'd be happy to answer any questions. I know that Mr. Knupp is here and Mrs. Knupp to make their case and the basis of their appeal, and also Mr. Callahan is here to make his case.
Are there any other similar structures in the neighborhood?
We drove out, and the area is clearly residential. It's right on the edge of town. That, I believe, is the fence line between the city and the county. If you can go through this real quickly, when that's the picture of his garage with the assisted living structure that he proposed, or unit. He has some structures now on site that he proposes to remove to make room for this structure. You can see in the last picture, you can see his residence on the left, and the proposed Mueller building will go on the right up against the county line. There are no Mueller buildings in that area that I saw. Further down the street, there is a larger garage or accessory building structure. We don't have a size measurement, but it would be, in my opinion, the largest accessory building in that area.
Thank you. Any questions? Questions? Councilor Bettis.
If you could just refresh my memory or state again that the actual size of the residence is 2,950. I was really confused by what you said.
When Mr. Callahan came in, he applied for a variance based on the supposition that his building was approximately 750 square feet, 1,750. So that would allow an accessory structure, if you use the 50% rule, of 875. And so when he was asking for a variance for a building of 1,800, that was more than double, or slightly more than double what would have been allowed. But in reviewing the project and reconsidering the definition of how we would consider the principal structure. Mr. Callahan came with a different number, a much larger number. So we asked the building inspector to go out and measure it himself. He went out with Luann Mitchell, and that document is this piece of paper that has the squares on it. I don't know, did you not receive this?
No,
Okay.
I have not seen. That's why the question, because you'd said we had the material, and the only thing I have before me is the patio additions and patio, but with no measurements.
Well, I'm sorry that this wasn't part of the submittal. I assumed it had been. This was a document that the building inspector made, and he has determined that the actual size of the building, if you use the roof edge and the exterior walls, is 2,819 feet. So the accessory building that would be allowed would be 1,400 square feet by right, or 1,410.
Thank you. I just was really concerned because I haven't seen that material.
Well, if we need to, we can make that part of the record.
That's what I was going to say. Do we not need to make this part of the record? Because I don't have this. I don't know if anyone else has
Well, I'm
this.
providing you new information that was revealed. It's not actually part of the information that was presented during the hearing, so I don't know exactly its particular status.
Oh,
I just
we're not-
wanted you to be aware.
New information is okay, is allowed, correct, Robert?
Yes.
It is. Okay.
However,
Yes.
for us to consider this, we need to make sure that both parties have reviewed this and have no objections to the evidence that's being submitted.
Okay. So before I look at it, make sure that that.
Peter, it's actually Mr. Knupp is the appellant. You need to, he needs to either okay that as evidence or object to it, and then Mr. Callahan needs to verify that he's seen it.
I would okay it, but may I readdress this later?
You absolutely may.
Can we take it out of your book?
So we thought this was useful to bring forward because it changes a little bit the nature of the request. The request is a smaller unit, larger than what the previous request was. The previous one was double the size of the allowed use. This would be 25% larger than allowed use.
And the accessory structure that he's proposing to build is measured in the same manner?
Well, we haven't, it's not there, so we didn't have the code officer go out there. But my understanding is the Mueller buildings have certain standard dimensions, and that Mr. Callahan is seeking one of the standard models. And I think that he can address that when he comes forward.
Well, that's that of him.
Yeah, because
You have the foot.
that's my same question is whether or not there's going to be additional porches and things put on that as part of it,
It's a
or
reasonable
beyond what the Mueller building is.
question. When he presented it, he talked specifically about the building plan that you see on the screen there, where it would be an enclosed building with part of it as a garage or place where he could work on his antique cars, and the other part to be a residential space, accessory building.
Well, the size of the residence structure has now increased by corrected map. And you said that the accessory structure could be 1,400 square feet.
Based on the
the new
of the
dimensions.
Yes, ma'am.
The request is for 1,800 square feet, correct?
The request is, the variance that is awarded is for 18.
It's for 18, right, okay. My apologies for not stating that correctly. Thank you.
So, you have a question?
Yeah.
You have the floor.
If I understand this, the staff recommendation that went to the planning and zoning was that as there have been no objections to Mr. Callahan's proposed building, they recommend approval for the variance.
That was the recommendation at the time that the report was submitted to the commission.
That seems like a fairly weak standard. The only standard is if there's objections or no objections.
It's a common standard.
So,
I mean, for instance, in the encroachment permit, there were no objections. That was part of the information that was brought forward to you.
well, it seems like the recommendations would be based on, you guys are the expert on the land use code. So it seems like the recommendation would refer to the land use code.
I'm going to stop that. Let's not debate the recommendation. That was part of the record. If he wants to change a recommendation or give a recommendation now based on changed findings, he can do that. The finding of no objection is an allowable opinion of the staff. When you're looking at a variance, we're looking at a policy decision that is made by the governing body, not the staff. So let's not debate that report on at least that part of it.
Okay.
You have the floor.
All right, that's all.
Any questions?
No, sir.
Mr. Scavern? I have a question. Since this is new and Mr. Ray is on the telephone, do we have an issue?
I think that you can fairly describe it, and if in his judgment it gives him the basis to form an opinion, that's fine.
Mr. Ray, Councilor Ray.
Yes, sir.
What was submitted as new evidence in this hearing is a drawing of the perimeter of the property owner's home that shows both the heated, the unheated, and the covered areas of the home, showing a square footage of looks like 2,819.5 square feet. Do you feel satisfied that you understand the main structure?
Yeah, according to this paper here, 1,800 square feet that he wanted, but now he wants, all together comes out to about 2,800 feet square feet, 1,000 more square feet, correct?
Well, no. The main house that he lives in, the main structure on the property, was originally measured at 1,750 square feet. It was remeasured to show 2,819.5 square feet. And we have a map up here, a diagram, showing us where all that square footage came from. The additional square footage comes from 2 or 3 covered porches that are around
And an attached garage.
and an attached garage that are attached to the home.
All right.
So,
That's fine.
do you have any questions on the main facility and the square footage of the main structure?
No, sir. No, sir, I don't.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Russell on the staff report? Mr. Knupp, you may present your appeal.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. My name is Thomas Knupp. Do you know my address?
We do.
I live at 4515 Langstrup Drive in Silver City. And I'm here to appeal the decision granting Mr. Callahan a variance to establish this building that seems to be getting larger at his residence. It's my understanding at this point now that he wants to put an 1,800 square foot accessory building on his property when zoning only permits a maximum of 875 feet. Is this square feet? Is this correct? Because I'm confused here.
He has a 2,900 square foot home, and he wants to put an 1,800 square foot accessory building.
Okay.
Correct?
So is that what it is?
Yes.
29? Okay.
The actual variance, if my numbers are right, is 325 square feet, which is above the allowable.
Okay, and he's allowed by code then, well, this would up it to 1,400 square feet. Is that correct?
1410 or 1475? 1410.
Okay, up from the 875. Is this correct?
Correct.
Okay. So this building is getting bigger as we speak. And this is roughly 30 by 60. That would be 1,800 square feet. That's was in his literature. And if I have this correct, this would put this at approximately the size of one of the small aircraft hangars out in Members Valley. Does this make sense to make it relative comparison?
You can use whatever you want to compare.
I don't know. That's what I'm asking. So he wants to put this up, and this size would actually be more suitable for a commercial or an industrial zoning. To have this in a residential area, this is way overkill. You've already got a 1,400 square foot allowable building, and he already wants to exceed this. He's previously stated that this building would be used as a shop, as a mother-in-law home, as only a shop for him to repair or to restore antique vehicles. I'm not quite sure what else. And my last understanding was that this would not be used as a residence. Can I get a verification?
The packet that we have says a mother-in-law apartment and a garage.
Okay, at the Planning and Zoning Commission hearing, I believe occupancy was dropped. Now, we'll have to ask him about that. He did state to me at the end of that meeting that he wanted to put a lift in there. I guess this is a hydraulic lift to work on cars. Now you've got a whole bunch of other things. You've got all kind of OSHA inspection on lifts and a whole big can of worms. It seems to me that this building, it's a great idea, and he's going to retire, and this is a hobby this sounds great, but this thing's getting bigger and bigger as the weeks go by. And my basic argument is this is just too big for a residential A neighborhood. I've talked with several realtors, and they've advised me that it will lower property values. How much? I have no idea, and they don't want to commit themselves as to how much. But this, for all intent and purposes, looks like an industrial building in a residential area. At this point, I don't know what he's going to use it for. He stated many different things, and, you know, myself, I would use it for different things. Storage, for a shop, for welding, for half a dozen different things. So I don't think you can specifically say, well, this is going to be for auto body shop, or it's a big building, and I'm sure it would be used for a number of different things. My biggest concern on this is that it is way too big for a residential area. As a hobby, it sounds great. I'd love to have this myself. It would really be neat to have a building that much I could go hide out in, but it just does not conform to residential A standards. It's something that should be in the industrial or commercial zone, and I would ask you folks to overrule the ruling from the Planning and Zoning Commission that allowed the variance. I would ask you folks to prohibit it. Thank you very much.
Questions?
Are you, yes, sir. You're a direct neighbor? Or you're adjacent to him?
On the same street. He's, I think, 2 doors down.
On the same side of the road?
Yeah.
Would this be visible from your house?
I believe so. Now, to what extent, I don't know. I've heard the height of this will be 16 feet, but then I've also heard 20, and that there's a maximum of 25, and I don't know how high this is going to be. And, you know, it's a hilly area, so I can't give you a real good answer on how much of this will be visible. But it would be visible, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
You mentioned several times that the building is growing.
Well, it started out on, I think his first letter here has, or I'll have to dig it up here. Here's an 1,800 square foot, and I think we have 1,400 square foot at one time or another. I will have to dig into my files to find that.
And you understand that it's only 390-ish square feet over what's allowed without a variance?
No, I don't understand that, because it seems to me that originally it was anything over 875 feet would require the variance. So I'm not positive where we stand now.
Okay, that changed because the main structure was measured.
Okay, so now we can go half of the main structure, and it's what, 2,900?
Correct.
So we can go 1,450, someplace like that.
Something like that.
Okay, and I'm getting lost here. Then we're allowed what, 50% of that?
Correct.
Okay.
No, that is the 50%.
Well, that is the 50%. Okay, so we've got a 1,450 foot building. My house is 1,700 feet. His shop's going to be just about the size of my house.
But you understand that's allowed within the current law without a variance?
Well, by this you're allowed 875.
No.
Run by
the
me.
875 is out because the house, the 875 was developed based on an assumption that the house was 1,750 square feet. When they actually went out and measured the house, it was not 1,750 square feet, it's 2,950 square feet.
Okay. So we're
That
29, so we're down to
grows
14. Okay, I see where
the
we
allowable
got
to
that.
1,400 square feet,
Okay.
which puts them basically within 400 square feet of being without a need for a variance.
Okay.
That's what I want to make sure.
Okay, I follow that. I'm still saying that a building this size is inappropriate for a residential A zoned area. This is something that needs to be in a commercial or industrial setting. It's a big building.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Is there any witnesses in support of the appellant's case?
Good evening, Mayor, Council. I'm Dana Nuff. I reside at 4515 Langston Drive in Silver City. And I have several concerns. When we started out and when the vote was taken, it was taken on the size of an 1,800 square foot house. Approximately, in fact, Mr. Callahan remarked it was the size of our house, which is, I think, 1,900 square feet. When the vote was taken, it was taken on the assumption of that size, and was, at that point, we're looking at an 1,800 square foot, 2-story building, which none of the houses in our area are 2-story. And we have talked to several of the neighbors. One lady behind us that owns the land behind theirs is very concerned. She's also 88 years old and doesn't travel well. But people are, I don't think they realize how big this is going to be. It will block our view, because I walked out my backyard and took a look. It will block our view in our backyard up the street to the hills. We'll have no view. The people across the street are going to be looking at this thing, and I really don't believe a lot of the people understand how big this is going to be. It's like putting a complete full-size house on the back half of a lot. And my concern, one of them, is in case of fire. How are you going to get a fire truck in here? There's a driveway that goes in that's suitable for a car. It's fenced behind. And you've got a vacant field back there with no access. I don't believe the concerns with drainage, because you're going to have a lot of water running down the street, has been addressed. It's also, we're on a 4-inch sewer line. So if you go putting a bunch of water or anything like that on that sewer line, it's going to have to be made bigger. There's no place for it. Also, when we talked to the realtors, they asked us, is this on a separate water meter? That it should be, because it's going to be a separate residence. And I don't know how you are going to build a residence in a building where you have gasoline, flame chemical, things that you don't really want to smell in a house. But I think the main objection that most people are going to have, and they're going to find it if it gets built, is it's going to be extremely large. And I think even 1,400 square feet, that's the size of a lot of houses in the town. And it's like putting a second residence on the back of a smaller property. Most of those lots are half-acre, maybe a little more. And putting 2 houses on something that size is going to crowd it considerably. And just, I know once it's up, we're going to lose a lot of our view. And any questions?
Questions?
I'm wondering where the fact that it's 2-story is in here. 'cause
We were told that
this
the
was
meeting-
based on the footprint that's been provided, which is the way this is calculated, correct, Mayor?
2-story is really irrelevant. It
That's
shouldn't
right.
be considered, because the height of the building, they have not requested a variance for the height of the building.
We were told it could go 25 feet.
I believe it can go with it up to 25 feet without a variance.
Yeah.
And that's not a subject to this hearing.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. No questions.
My only thing, last little remark is, would you really want this in your neighbor's backyard next to your house?
Thanks.
Thank you.
Any other witnesses in support of the appeal?
Good evening, Mayor, councilors. My name is Joyce Newman. I'm a resident of Cold Spring Park, which is a neighbor to the Hidden Park subdivision. I live at 3902 Tom Lyons Drive here in Silver City, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you. I'm asking you to approve the appeal of the variance and reverse the approval of the Planning and Zoning Board. I'm asking for this for 4 reasons. The first being community character, the second being existing law, the third being property values, and the fourth, errors in the original application. As for community character, the Nubs, who I don't know, have stated how it would adversely affect their neighborhood. I drove past the residence, the property in question today, noted that the home that's there is already considerably larger than many of its neighbors. It has a 2-car garage and two-car carports. I was told that the placement of this building would not be visible. I believe that everyone who lives on Pierce Road, driving north every day, would see it, and it would be a complete eyesore. And my cursory inspection of the other accessory buildings in the neighborhood is that the few that do exist are very small. I believe that the reason that we have zoning laws and comprehensive plans is to protect everyone. And here we're being asked to approve something that is not in character with the neighborhood, that is larger than the law allows. And the law is the way it is for very good reasons. And if you attended any of the years of meetings that were necessary with public input to get the current comprehensive plan, you would appreciate that that 50% rule for an accessory use is not just a whim on anyone's part. There is an aspect of law called quiet enjoyment, and citizens, property owners, residents are entitled to quiet enjoyment of their properties. And that means that if you buy in a residential neighborhood and the law says it's residential and there are certain parameters that need to be followed as new structures are added, that you can rely on those laws being followed and enforced without having to go to the courts to seek legal redress. I believe that this approval by the Planning and Zoning Council is an example of selective enforcement, like selective zoning or spot zoning. And any land use experts that you talk to say that's the reason we have these plans, to avoid some people getting to do something that the law says they shouldn't and then others not being able to do it. As for protecting property values, a residential neighborhood has a certain feel to it. And I don't believe that this large building is consistent with the community character. And one thing that I noted in the file of both the variance application and then the appeal was that in the original discussion, one of the planning and zoning members, who is a realtor, so certainly has a lot of experience with this, stated that he has sold property in that particular neighborhood based on the fact that it was semi-rural, low density, very consistent community character. And in point of fact, he was the only one who voted against the approval of that variance. In view of the fact that I examined all of the materials that were in the file this afternoon at 3 o'clock, and there was no new drawing, I would suggest that you reverse the planning and zoning decision this evening without prejudice, allowing Mr. Callahan to start over with an accurate application, which would then allow his neighbors to know the magnitude of the building, the size of the building that is being requested. And I believe that this new information negates the original approval. And part of that process, if a new application were to be made, would be to examine whether there are building permits on file for a residence of 1,705 feet, as it states in the application, or whether these covered porches and other things were part, if they have been permitted, or whether they are accessory uses using up some of the available square feet in and of themselves. Thank you.
Any other witnesses in support of the appeal? Any witnesses in opposition to the appeal?
Good evening. My name is John Callahan. I live at 4425 Langstroth Drive, and I'm in opposition of the appeal. I'm the one requesting the building. First of all, I want to apologize for giving the wrong square footage. I did not ask the question how the city calculated the square footage compared to a realtor. When I bought the house over 20 years ago, the realtor said it was 1,750 square feet. So when I went to apply for the variance, that is what I put down. I did not ask the question. I apologize for that. I did not think it would come to this. After the appeal came in, I asked the city council, the city planning and zoning at that point, how they calculated the square footage, and they told me, and that's when they come out and measured. So I apologize for that. Mr. and Mrs. Knupp, they live 3 lots above me, and there is a vacant lot, then there's a residence, and then their house. At this point, them blocking their view, you really have to try, because at that point I have a RV garage there now, as you can see by the picture, with stuff put in it that I'm going to get rid of. And then behind that I have a wall, and then the neighbor behind me has another building approximately 15 by 20, probably with a 10-foot sidewall. And then on the county side, they have another building plus stalls. So by the time they get down there, it's quite a ways to us. Industrial buildings are not 14 foot high. Industrial buildings are 20 and 25 foot high. I am retired. I was a maintenance manager for Phelps Dodge for 30 years. Last year was with Freeport McMoran. I know industrial buildings. I wouldn't build an industrial building 14 foot with side walls. The building is not getting bigger. The only thing that got bigger was the footprint of my house allowed me to build more. Brian Ritchie, who lives at 4330 Langstroth Drive, who was just within 300 feet of my house, has a building 30 by 40 with 14-foot walls. Some people that live out of my 300-foot area down Langstroth Drive have a RV park, RV carport, totally covered in, I'd say 20 foot high, I don't know. But that's on down the street. I don't go down there, so I don't look. So I will just say there are bigger buildings in there as far as for the real estate person coming down there. This is a rural area. The lots are bigger. You could probably subdivide our lots into 2 or 3 lots compared to city lots. Water drainage, if you look at the picture, all the water, anything on this side, I'm right at the crest of the hill. And that's how come I didn't add on to my house, because I had to build a retaining wall around my house to keep my family room from flooding, because it did flood before I was able to do it. The water will run, and I have to check with the drainage with the city and get improvement from them, but the water will not run to the street. It will run back toward the creek that's in the back in Cold Springs Ranch, the same place that it runs now. So as far what I'm asking for with the correction that my mistake is, like you said, I'm really asking for 390 square feet, which the building will be 13 feet longer. Right now I can build a 30 by 47. I'm asking for a 30 by 60. I will build a 30 by 47, and then I will build another one that's 20 by 40. Which is inside what I can do, 10 feet from my building that I have. I'm not threatening, I'm just saying these are my options. I think it would be cleaner and look better with one building. The lady, I'm sorry I could not hear everything that she said. Coming up the street, really the only place that you're going to see the building will be the driveway coming in, which right now is the RV park, which is a bunch of junk park there. So the building will look better. I do not think it will degrade the value of the houses in the area, because there's buildings and structures like that are already there. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. You have questions?
Probably for Mr. Russell.
You have the floor.
I didn't, and maybe Mr. Callahan will have to come back. Didn't quite understand the last discussion he made about what he would do. I guess in the original document you say that he could build 2 875 square foot accessory buildings. So with the new calculation, how many accessory buildings at what size can he build on his lot?
There's no limit to the number of accessory buildings that you can put on a lot. We don't have a lot coverage rule. So as long as you meet your setbacks, 5 feet on the sides, 10 in the back, and 10 or 20 in the front, you can cover your lot with buildings. So long, if you have separate buildings, that the buildings need the fire code separation, which is typically 10 feet. But it varies according to the materials used. So I believe what Mr. Callahan was saying is that if he could not build an 1,800 square foot building, he would build a 1,400 square foot building and another one to make up the difference, which he would be fully allowed to do. The difference is you would have 2 buildings instead of 1 building. He sought to have 1 building because he thought it would be more attractive and because there would be a savings in the way the utilities could be hooked up to just 1 instead of 2 buildings.
Okay, I have to go back to something I wrote down that I may have written down incorrectly in your previous testimony, which is you said, as you said, that you can build as many as you like so long as the setbacks are maintained. And then for some reason I have written down 3 800 square foot buildings not more than one 875 square foot building. So what does that refer to, so I can kind of
right,
put this
I believe that in his initial application, if you look at the ratio, the 50% ratio, if you have a 1,750 square foot building as your principal structure, you can have an 875 square foot building as a maximum size of your accessory structure. However, there's no limit to the number of accessory structures you could have. So you could have one 875, or two 875, or three 875. There's no limit. It's strictly a proportion between an accessory structure and the principal structure. That's the only thing the rule addresses.
Right. I guess what I was trying to figure out is why I'd written this down and what it really meant.
You probably were noticing that he could build three 800 square foot buildings instead of one 2,400 square foot.
Okay, that's probably where that came from, because I hadn't written down why that was stated. For the moment, I'm fine, Mayor.
Just a clarifying question. There was a couple comments on size of lots and such. And it sounds like most of the lots there are about half an acre.
Or larger.
Or larger.
Yes, sir.
Generally speaking, in residential A's in town, how is that compared to a normal city lot?
Well, the minimum size of a city lot is 5,000 square feet. So if someone came in to plat a lot right now, that's what size it would be.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at the area around Juniper and Swan in that area, the lots tend to be between 7,500 and 10,000 square feet. The accessory structure proportion has several parameters. One of the parameters is that if the lot is over half an acre, then the relationship is strictly proportional, 50%. If it's under half an acre, then there's a cap also. So, for instance, if you lived on Juniper Street, then the cap would kick in at 1,000 square feet. So you have a minimum allowed of 600. If your building were 1,800, you could have 900. Mm-hmm. If your building were 3,000, you couldn't have 1,500. It would be capped at 1,000. And the idea was that in the areas where the buildings are closer together and the occupancy is much denser, that you just wanted to clearly establish the nature of the principal use, the residence. In the larger lot areas where the distances between buildings are greater, then the thinking of the committee that worked on this formula was that you could go with larger structures.
And that's what we're dealing with is these much larger lots.
So an area would be the Indian Hills area, the Cold Springs Park area, over on Mountain View, etc. But in areas that were, say, in the historic district, 7th Street, then it would not. You would have the smaller threshold. Or the smaller limit.
It was also brought up, is there any requirements for mother-in-law homes or accessory dwellings to have separate water meters?
Yes.
Is that common?
And it's required.
It is required?
If you have a separate dwelling unit, you must have a separate water tap. And that would be a requirement of the building permit. We would not issue you a building permit without that separate.
So that's going to happen if this,
yes,
one way or another. Okay. That's all my questions.
Questions?
No, I think I'm fine, Mayor. Thank you.
Mr. Nupp? I'll make you come up one more time.
Did you want me to motion? If you don't mind. After this?
I just have a question regarding, he could currently, according to his numbers, build a 30 by 47 structure without a variance. And put right next to it, within the fire code's allowance and the setbacks, another 30 by 47 structure. Or if this application goes through, he builds one 30 by 60 and he's done. You fully understand that? Okay. Is there anything else you wish to be reflected in the record?
No, I don't believe so.
Does any member of the hearing board have any questions for any witness?
No, sir.
Is the hearing board prepared to consider the application or render its decision? Councilor Morones.
Mayor, I'd like to move to go into executive session pursuant to NMSA 1978, Section 10-15-1H for the following reasons. Deliberations by a public body in connection with an administrative adjudicatory proceeding.
Is there a second?
I second the motion as stated.
There's a motion and a second to go into executive session pursuant to NMSA 1978, Section 10-15-1H for number 3, deliberations by a public body in connection with an administrative adjudicatory proceeding. Roll call.
Councilor Morales?
Aye.
Councilor Ray?
Councilor Ray.
Aye.
How many is that?
Councilor Thompson?
Aye.
Councilor Madison?
Aye.
We'll be in executive session. Call this meeting of the Town Council back to order out of executive session. There was no discussions outside of the motion that was made to go into executive session. There were no decisions made within the executive session. And we are still on a hearing, reference, and appeal. Does any member of the hearing board have any questions for any witness?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Bedison.
I have questions for Mr. Callahan and for Mr. Russell, if you'll...
Mr. Callahan.
Mr. Callahan first, and then Mr. Russell.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Callahan, do you have any intent to use this building as for industrial or commercial, home business, or business use?
No, ma'am.
Thank you. Mr. Russell? According to the information in the notice of decision, it is correct to state that due to zoning laws, commercial enterprises would not be allowed in residential area where this property is located.
That's correct, but there is a qualifying observation. Some types of home businesses would be allowed.
Correct.
An industrial or auto mechanic type use is not one of those.
Thank you, Mr. Russell.
Any other questions? Mr. Knupp, in light of the questions that were just asked and the answers just given, do you have anything further?
No, sir.
Does any member of the hearing board have any questions for any witnesses?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Councilor Ray, any questions for any witness?
No, sir.
Is the hearing board prepared to consider this appeal and render its decision?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, in reminding everyone that the reason for this appeal, and I read directly from the application, is due to an industrial business building in a residential area. I move that the appeal, which is based on the ground that the proposed building is to be industrial business, be denied.
Mr. Mayor, I second the motion as stated.
There's a motion and a second to deny the appeal. Is there any discussion?
No, sir.
There's a motion and a second to deny. No further discussion. Roll call.
Councilor Morales?
Aye.
Councilor Ray?
Councilor Ray.
Aye.
Councilor Thompson?
Aye.
Councilor Madison?
Aye.
The appeal is denied, and that concludes this hearing.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilor Bedison.
I move for a short break.
I'll second that.
There's a motion and a second for a short break. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. We're in recess. Call this meeting of the Town Council back to order, and the next item on the agenda is under new business. Item A, approval, disapproval of resolution number 2011-29, a resolution of the Council of the Town of Silver City, New Mexico, authorizing and approving the submission of an application for financial assistance and project approval to the New Mexico Finance Authority, and authorizing the mayor to act as the Town of Silver City's chief executive officer and authorized representative in all matters pertaining to the Town of Silver City's participation in the NMFA program. Denise?
I'm Denise Smith, and Mayor, councilors, thank you for this opportunity to promote a subject that I'm really passionate about. So what we're applying for is water conservation planning. Implementation would come later. The planning grant would be used to evaluate ways to sustain and conserve clean and abundant water sources for approximately 25,000 water users. So that's the Town of Silver City, the extraterritorial zone, and the adjacent water associations of Pinos Altos, Tyrone, Rosedale, and Arenas Valley. There's many good reasons to do a water conservation plan. I believe you have a narrative in front of you, and on the second page, there's a list of 7. And I'm not going to actually read those right now, but I think those are... Do you have those in front of you?
Yeah, we have.
Okay, thank you. So those are the reasons that we have listed. And an overriding goal is to implement these conservation measures while having a revenue-neutral impact on the town, because we are really well aware that the town is concerned about conserving water would reduce revenues. So we're looking at a revenue-neutral plan. My research shows that that is possible. And Alex provided some edits today that I think you got. Those were the water rates. They were changed. So we corrected the water rates, and then we also answered the 2 questions that had not been answered in the application. So they were on the bottom of page 2 and the top of page 3. What I did miss is a correction that Alex had given me, and where it says wastewater rate and water rate, the 3rd line there is last adjusted, and the wastewater rate was last adjusted in 2011, just in June, whereas the water rate was 2008. So I need to make that correction before I actually submit the application. Are there any questions?
Any questions? Questions?
Mayor and Council, I do also want to add that many of our grants that pertain to the water and sewer system do at least provide additional points for municipalities or organizations that have water conservation plans in place. So this would add to our ability to apply for future funding for water sewer improvements.
Councilor Best.
I move that we approve resolution number 2011-29, a resolution of the Council of the Town of Silver City, New Mexico, authorizing and approving the submission of an application for financial assistance and project approval to the New Mexico Finance Authority, and authorizing the mayor to act as the Town of Silver City's chief executive officer and authorized representative in all matters pertaining to the Town of Silver City's participation in the MFA program.
Mr. Mayor, I second that motion as stated.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Willing discussion. Did you read that off the agenda or off the resolution?
I read it off the agenda. Would you prefer I reread it off the resolution?
I would prefer you read it off the resolution.
Okay.
Hold on.
The agenda has to act, the words to act that we deleted from the resolution because he already is the chief executive officer.
Okay. So may I reread it?
You may.
I move that we approve resolution number 2011-29, a resolution of the Council of the Town of Silver City, New Mexico, authorizing and approving the submission of an application for financial assistance and project approval to the New Mexico Finance Authority, and authorizing the mayor as the Town of Silver City's Chief Executive Officer and authorized representative in all matters pertaining to the Town of Silver City's participation in the MFA program.
Second that motion.
There's a motion and a second to approve Resolution 2011-29. Is there any discussion? There's a motion and a second. No further discussion. Roll call, please.
Council Basin?
Aye.
Council Thompson?
Aye.
Councilor Ray? Is he gone?
He's absent.
Councilor Morales?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is approval, disapproval of fire protection automatic aid agreement between the municipal and rural fire departments serving the county of Grant, New Mexico. And basically what you have before you is an agreement that most of the municipalities have already considered and have signed off on. There was a few changes that were made today, basically clerical and, well, one of them that's kind of structural. The basis for the agreement is to increase the speed and efficiency for response to fires in bordering jurisdictions. And so, as listed on there is all the jurisdictions and how they border each other. They will, when a fire comes in that seems like it has potential, dispatch can automatically dispatch the two nearest departments and get a quicker, more efficient response to the fire. And this just sets up the agreement that allows us to do that and sets that policy in place. And our Assistant Chief Heydrich is here if anybody has any questions. Oh, I was going to mention the corrections that I worked on today with Gary Benavides from the county were in the first paragraph. It says effective basically as of the 25th day of May 2011. We deleted that, and that is basically replaced with, at the bottom, it's effective when it's signed by all the parties. And then the last thing was we corrected where our copy showed the fire chief executes, we just put the local government executes. And then there's the signature lines for all the mayors and the attest, which may be on your copy, was removed. Any questions?
Not a question, but a comment. There's a few other clerical changes. I'm not sure if it's necessary in the document, but they're grammatical errors.
I think if you submit the grammatical errors when they make the other corrections, they're, as long as they don't change the content of the agreement.
They don't. They just drop an S somewhere because it's in the wrong place. Our town clerk actually has those changes.
Okay. Any other discussion? Questions?
No, it's a good idea.
Questions, discussion from the audience? All of you? Entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor. Oh.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilor.
I move for approval of fire protection automatic aid agreement between the municipal and rural fire departments serving the county of Grant, New Mexico.
Mr. Mayor, I second the motion as stated.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? There's a motion and a second. No further discussion to approve the automatic aid agreement. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is approval, disapproval of bid 11/12-2, Gabby Hayes replacement well. Mr. Brown.
Mayor and Council, a request that this be postponed to the next meeting, to this special meeting, because we did receive one bid that did respond properly, but there was a few technical irregularities that did not disqualify it, and that we're getting fixed before we want to bring it to you for approval, for recommendation for approval.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilor.
I move that we postpone to the special meeting on August 15th at 9 o'clock in this room. Number C, approval and disapproval of bid 11/12-2, Gabby Hayes replacement well.
Is there a second?
I second that motion as stated.
There's a motion and a second to postpone action on bid 11/12-2. Is there any discussion? There's a motion and a second. No further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is endorsement of Councilor Cynthia Ann Bettison as declared candidate for a Director-at-Large position on the New Mexico Municipal League's 2011-2012 Board of Directors. And I ask that this be put on the agenda as part of the application that Councilor Bettison filled out. There is a portion that requests whether the local government endorses it, and I think that she would be a very fine candidate and represent the town very well on the board of directors for the New Mexico Municipal League, and I would support our endorsement. Any other discussion? Councilor Morales.
Mr. Mayor, I fully agree with you, and I move to endorse Councilor Cynthia Ann Bettison as a declared candidate for the Director-at-Large position on the New Mexico Municipal League's 2011-2012 Board of Directors.
I'll second that.
There's a motion and a second to endorse Councilor Cynthia Ann Bettison as a candidate on the New Mexico Municipal League's 2011-12 Board of Directors for candidate at large. Any discussion? There's a motion, a second, and no further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? You vote.
I said aye and saw me.
Okay.
I'm sorry. No.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is approval, disapproval of letters to support the bill introduced by U.S. Senators Tom Udall, Jeff Bingaman for a polytrauma center in southern New Mexico and El Paso, Texas region, and with special consideration of historic Fort Bayard as a potential location. As I believe most of you probably know, the senators have introduced legislation to support a study of a polytrauma center that would be located in this region, specifically naming Fort Bayard as a possible location. We have been requested to submit a letter of support, and we're unable to do that without creating a rolling quorum unless we do it in an open meeting. So it's here in our meeting for us to consider. Any discussion?
Mr. Mayor.
Councilor.
I'm very pleased that we're considering this because historic Fort Bayard would make an excellent location for a polytrauma rehabilitation center or site in southern New Mexico. Currently, our veterans have to drive, I think it's to Albuquerque, and this would provide a center or site that's much closer. And I think it's an ideal location. It's in the past been a veterans facility. Historically, that's what Fort Bayard was changed to after its mission to be one of the forts in the region during the wars. And so I think that reinvigorating that mission to serve our veterans is an exceptional idea.
Any other discussion? My only other comments would be obviously the foundation for having a polytrauma center in southwest New Mexico with our very high concentration of veterans goes without saying. The fact that Fort Bayard is in need of a root and a foundation for its occupancy that can be built upon, it would be advantageous for it to be at Fort Bayard as well as for the economy of the area. I've been in some meetings where this has been discussed recently, and I know we're definitely facing an uphill battle as most polytrauma centers around the country are surrounded by major municipalities, and they have many other advanced, extensive healthcare services that they offer in those regions that we're not able to offer due to our low population. But I think in supporting the study and seeing what can be done, it absolutely does not hurt and could possibly benefit our local economy and our veterans.
Mr. Mayor, I move that...
Can I ask you to hold 1 second?
Sure. Okay.
Being as this is, we do have a veteran on the council, and I do want to try to get him on the phone before we end the business. Thank you, Robert, Alex, whoever reminded me. Oops.
Please enjoy the music while your party is reached.
Jose. 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 Hello. Okay, we tried. Councilor Bedison, you have the floor.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve letters to support the bill introduced by U.S. Senators Tom Udall and Jeff Bingman for a polytrauma center in southern New Mexico and El Paso, Texas region, and with special consideration of historic Fort Baird as a potential location.
Is there a second?
Mr. Mayor, I second that motion as stated.
There's a motion and a second to approve the agenda item. Is there any other discussion? There's a motion and a second to approve the letters and no further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We also had another discussion on the letters, and it's who we send them to. And in lieu of sending letters like this to every member of Congress and tying up Ann in the mailroom for days writing all these letters and getting them addressed, I would like to send them to the specific committees once this is referred that address veterans issues, if there's no objection.
I think that's a good idea, and that way when the committee receives it, it can be read into the record, the congressional record, hopefully.
Right. So the next item on the agenda is item F, approval, disapproval of notice of intent ordinance number 1182, and ordinance amending Appendix C Land Use and Zoning Code 2010, Article 6, Administration, Section 6.1.1, Planning and Zoning Commission of the Town of Silver City Municipal Code. Basically what you have is a notice of intent that first and foremost, it replaces a whole bunch of issues dealing with planning and zoning that were omitted from the new land use code in error, and we are restoring those. Secondly, and it points out in the whereases, is we now have an ETJ commission, and we have dropped the issues that involve that area from P&Z's purview. So the area has been made smaller that they oversee. I would like to see us drop it from 7 to 5-1, as I think this council is a body of 5 with only 4 voting, and I think we represent the town very well. There is a portion that when we make appointments, we try to follow districts as best as possible. We have at times had a very difficult time finding volunteers for both commissions and advisory boards, and I think it does no harm and allows for a continued functional committee. And I do not believe it even changes the number of the supermajority. Right? Well, it's 4 to 3.
4 to 3. It goes from 4 to 3.
4 to 3. So that would be the effect. The other issue is if this NOI is passed, it would then be forwarded to the Planning and Zoning Commission. They would review it and send back a recommendation before we would hear it again. Any discussion? Discussion? Any discussion in the audience? Nope. Hearing none. Entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor,
Counselor.
I move that we approve notice of intent to adopt an ordinance amending Appendix C, Land Use and Zoning Code of 2010, Article 6, Administration, Section 6.1.1, Planning and Zoning Commission of the Town of Silver City Municipal Code. That would be ordinance number 1182.
There's a motion and a second to approve notice of intent ordinance number 1182. Is there any further discussion? Councilor. There's a motion and a second to approve notice of intent ordinance number 1182 and no further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is appointment of members to the Mayor's Climate Protection Agreement Citizens Advisory Committee. I did send the comments that I made in the council previously regarding focusing the appointments on this committee, and the committee is reviewing those. They have reviewed these applicants, and they did recommend that I proceed. And we have applicant from Shelby Hallmark and Linda K. Thompson, and I would like to make those appointments. Well, I believe Linda's a reappointment, and Shelby is a new appointment. And if there's no objection, they're appointed.
No objection.
No objections.
There's no objections heard. They're duly appointed. Entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move for adjournment.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned.